Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Hello, guys. It is time. We're here to talk Delphi. I was so excited to go live last night, but StreamYard was having issues. Those of you guys who were here for any of the live stream from yesterday morning with Casey Anthony probably saw there were some issues, new issues actually, in addition to the other issues that myself and other creators have experienced recently with StreamYard. But anyway, hopefully everything will be going well today and finally making this happen. So what should be happening today? All right. Jury had the day off yesterday from deliberations, and they should be coming back at like 9 a.m. to the courthouse. So about what's going on with all of that. But I've got a lot of different things planned here. So all righty. So the first thing I want to do, let me put this up. I'm pulling up the jury instructions. Let me see here. So you guys can enjoy looking at this map while I'm pulling up these jury instructions. So okay, so here's what I want to do first. Let me actually share this differently. Hold on. So I can show this to you guys. Okay. Excellent. Here we go. Wonderful. All right. So here's the thing. You know, this trial, we don't have any idea. Like, we can't hear things for ourselves, see things for ourselves. Everyone, I'm sure, is well aware. But the one thing I was thinking about that we can do is we can look at these jury instructions. And why am I saying this? Because what we know is that when it came to the jury instructions, typically in trials, you know, there's lengthy discussions and, you know, there's a lot of changes that are made. But in this case, we know from those who were there in the courtroom that they really used the pattern jury instructions. I don't think they made any real changes. I think there was a slight change about maybe the defendant's right to not testify, but then they retracted that. So as far as we know, the jury instructions that were read to the jury are exactly as they're the pattern jury instructions. So what I have here, these are the Indiana pattern jury instructions from 2023. And we actually heard about that again from those who were in the courtroom. They had made reference to the fact that I think it was the judge Gull had referenced how the pattern jury instructions had just been updated. And that's true. These are from 2023. So this is great because when we take a look at these, we know this is exactly what was read to the jury. And the other thing is that Indiana has a lot of unique quirks about it in terms of how they conduct their trials as it relates to the jury. One of those that I found noteworthy, you know, the jury's allowed to take notes. That's not uncommon. They're allowed to ask questions. That's a little bit more rare, but not unheard of. We've seen this in other trials. But I think more importantly, you know, they've been allowed, in this case, they've been sequestered, right? But they've been allowed to discuss the evidence throughout the course of the trial. Not deliberate, but discuss the evidence. So you better believe that that was going on. And I think that a lot of folks, myself included, would think that maybe that would potentially speed up the deliberation process to a certain extent, right? Because it's not like they're coming in and haven't been able to talk about the evidence, which is normally the case. They've been able to talk about the evidence. And additionally, the other thing that's odd is when it comes to the deliberations, the alternates are kept there with the rest of the jury panel. And the alternates still sit there and listen to the deliberations. So they're there, but they are not allowed to speak or participate, which is just insane. So they have to sit there and hold their tongue, but they're there instead of, you know, normally the alternates are kept separately. And I think that the reason for this is that it's maybe in the event that something happens to one of the deliberating jurors, maybe the point is so that when they bring in an alternate, maybe they don't have to start their deliberations over. That's normally what would happen. But normally the alternates have been kept separately and haven't been a part of it. So anyway, all right. So let's see, there might be some other quirks along the way as we go through this. We're not going to read all of it. Obviously, it's a 1,126 pages. Shout out to Flash Fan and shout out to Need Some Z's. Flash Fan, I hope you had a nice day at church yesterday. Okay, so let's take a look here. Boop, 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 boop. Well, I guess what I could do, hold on, what did it say? Stuff. Okay, so page 6. Well, we just had page 6. Okay, so the charge, page 8. Oh, I see. The page numbers it's referencing are at the bottom and not as per the document. Okay, so let me look for page 6 on the thing here. Okay, so this is page 1 as per the, all right, here we go. Okay, here we go, guys. This is exactly, y'all, this is exactly what was, why is there a black square? This is exactly what was read to the jury. We can actually have an idea as to something that happened at least. We can take a look at it for ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, you are now the jury in this case. Now, okay, as we go through these, we're going to talk further too about maybe how if you've been following this case, imagine if you were a juror, and remember you've been able to ask questions, you've been able to take notes, and you've been able to discuss the evidence so far, and then you're being read these instructions, and in your mind you're probably taking this in and thinking how and trying to anticipate potentially what the next steps will be. Like, how will the deliberation process start? Like, what will be how will this even happen? So we can kind of see it through that lens as we go through it. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you are now the jury in this case. I would like to take a few minutes to describe your duties as jurors and to give you the instructions concerning the case. As the judge in this case, one of my duties is to decide all questions of law and procedure. In these preliminary instructions during the trial, and at the end of the trial, I will instruct you on the rules of law that you must follow in making your decision. The instructions that I give you at the end of the trial will be more detailed than the instructions I'm giving you now. They'll all have copies. You have two duties as jurors. Your first duty is to decide the facts from the evidence that you see and hear in court. Your second duty is to take the law as I give it to you, apply it to the facts, and decide if the government has proved the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that next part doesn't actually apply here. You must perform these duties fairly and impartially. Do not let sympathy, prejudice, fear, or public opinion influence you. You should not take anything I say or do during the trial as indicating what I think of the evidence or what I think your verdict should be. That's especially important here when it comes to this judge. All right, the charge. So the charge against the defendant is, and we're going to get to the charge here in a second, in a document called an indictment. I don't think he was indicted. I think it was information. So the information in this case charges the defendant, blah, blah. A lot of this is fill in the blanks here, so I'll skip it actually. Okay. The defendant is presumed innocent of each and every charge. The presumption continues throughout the case. It is not overcome unless, from all the evidence in the case, you are convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty as charged. The government has the burden of proof of proving the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden of proof stays with the government throughout the case. A defendant is never required to prove his innocence. He is not required to produce any evidence at all. Alternative, oh, this is giving them an alternative here. So we're not going to read the alternative. The evidence. You may consider only the evidence that you see and hear in court. You may not consider anything you may see or hear outside of court, including anything from the newspaper, etc. You can see that there. The evidence includes only what the witnesses say when they are testifying under oath and the exhibits that I allow into evidence and any facts to which the parties stipulate to. Nothing else is evidence. Any statements and arguments that the lawyers make are not evidence. If what a lawyer says is different from the evidence as you hear or see it, the evidence is what counts. Lawyers' questions and objections likewise are not evidence. A lawyer has a duty to object if he thinks a question or evidence is improper. No verdict yet, Flashman. When an objection is made, I will be required to rule on an objection. If I sustain an objection to a question a lawyer asks, you must not speculate on what the answer might have been. If I strike testimony or an exhibit from the record or tell you to disregard something, you must not consider it. Pay close attention to the evidence as it is being presented. During your deliberations, you will have any exhibits that I allow into evidence, but you will not have a transcript of the testimony. You will have to make your decision based on what you recall of the evidence. Okay, that doesn't apply here. No interpreter. Direct and circumstantial evidence. You may have heard terms like direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. Direct evidence is evidence that directly proves a fact. Circumstantial evidence is evidence that indirectly proves a fact. For example, direct evidence that it was raining outside is testimony by a witness that it was raining. Indirect evidence is that it was raining outside is the observation of someone entering a room carrying a wet umbrella. You are to consider both direct and circumstantial evidence. The law does not say that one is better than the other. It is up to you to decide how much weight to give to any evidence, whether direct or circumstantial. Considering the evidence. Give the evidence whatever weight you believe it deserves. Use your common sense in weighing the evidence and consider the evidence in light of your own everyday experience. People sometimes look at one fact and conclude from it that another fact exists. This is called an inference. You are allowed, this is important, you're allowed to make reasonable inferences so long as they are based on the evidence. Credibility of witnesses. Part of your job as jurors will be to decide how believable each witness was and how much weight to give each witness's testimony. I will give you additional instructions about this at the end of the trial. Number of witnesses, that's not quite important, just that one. Juror note-taking. All right. You will be permitted to take notes during the trial. If you take notes, you may use them during deliberations to help you remember what happened during the trial. You should use your notes only as aids to your memory. The notes are not evidence. All of you should rely on your independent recollection of the evidence, and you should not be unduly influenced by the notes of other jurors. Notes are not entitled to any more weight than the memory or impressions of each juror. And this is important because I've heard some people or seen some people asking questions about, like, what if what's going on is like they're back there and, you know, some jurors took some more notes than others. Like, let's say that somebody didn't take notes on a certain witness and another juror did, and they're like arguing about something that was said. And I've seen people ask, like, can't they bring out their notes and be like, hey, look, I took notes and you didn't, so this is right. The answer is no. The notes are just there to aid them, but they have to rely on their memory, and they cannot be used like that to try to prove that one juror's view is more important than the others, or that their memory is more reliable than others. Okay, so this is about before the trial. I'm not going to read all that part. Let's see here. Make statements. Okay, so those were the jury instructions before trial. Okay, so now this would have been the instructions given before closing arguments. Members of the jury, I will now instruct you on the law that you must follow in deciding this case. I'll each copy. You must follow all of my instructions about the law, even if you disagree with them. This includes the instructions I gave you before the trial, which we just read, any instructions I gave you during the trial, and the instructions I am giving you now. As jurors, you have two duties. Your first duty is to decide the facts and the evidence that you saw and heard here in court. This is your job, not my job or anyone else's job. Your second duty is to take the law as I give it to you, apply it to the facts, and decide if the government has proved the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You must perform these duties fairly and impartially. Do not let sympathy, prejudice, fear, or public opinion influence you. You must not take anything I said or did in the trials as indicating that I have an opinion about the evidence or what I think your verdict should be. Okay, now I'm going to see if I can pull up the charges. Hold on, give me just a moment here, guys. Let's see. All right. Oops. Let's see here. Where is... Okay. All right, we got it. Let me share this. So, oh yeah, I agree. She definitely has an opinion as well. Oh, shout out to Courtney. I don't know if you're welcome if you're new here. Actually, I do believe you're new here. I don't believe we've had a squirrel so far from Indiana. You are, to my knowledge, our first Indiana squirrel. So welcome. I'm so happy that you are here. Thank you so much. Look, this is awesome. And let us know, have you been attending the trial? Are you anywhere close to Carroll County? I'm so curious what it's like from your perspective being in Indiana. That's awesome. So now we've got here we go. All right, so now we're going to look at the charges because that was going to be the next part in the jury instructions. So murder, here we go. Because, it does vary, right? Like great example. We just finished with Sarah Boone, right? And one thing that was really interesting is that in Florida, whether it be first degree or second degree murder, intent is not even mentioned. Intent is not relevant. Intent does not need to be proved. It's not anywhere, but in most states, or a lot of states anyway, intent is part of the statute that needs to be proven when it comes to a first degree and potentially also second degree murder. So let's see what they say here. So, all right, murder. A person who, one, so remember, these are the elements of the crime. So each one of these needs to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So person who, one, knowingly or intentionally kills another human being. So here, intentionally is used, right? But it doesn't have to be intent. It doesn't say knowingly and intentionally. It says knowingly or intentionally. So really, you could say that that's where the intent can matter, but it doesn't have to. Because if they knew they did it, that's enough. Two, kills another human being while committing or attempting to commit arson, burglary, child molesting, a bunch of other things, other crimes, right? And number three is essentially the same thing. Okay, so voluntary manslaughter, those don't apply. So the next one so that's pretty short and sweet. We're looking for the kidnapping. Charge. Because that'll be interesting to see what that's. Hazing. Mischief? Wait. Mischief. Overpass mischief, guys. Fascinating. Aha, excellent. Here we go. Okay. Kidnapping. So this is the other thing. So Richard Allen has two counts of murder and 2 counts of kidnapping. Oh, wow. That is awesome. So you don't live far from Delphi. What is it like from your perspective? Are people talking about this case like in like if you go to the grocery store or if you're at work, like, and what are your thoughts? I'm really curious. So kidnapping. Okay. A person who knowingly or intentionally removes another person by fraud, enticement, force, or threat of force from one place to another commits kidnapping. So this would be, well, the jury wouldn't be told this, right? The jury is just going to be read this. And, what's interesting is that neither party in closing arguments, from what's been, reported from those in court, really used these jury instructions in their closing as much as they could have, or maybe should have. But, the idea here, if you're the state, would be you want them to understand that what the kidnapping here is moving them from the bridge to down the hill or wherever else, right? Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. There were actually a number of times in the trial where the people that were taking, almost verbatim notes of what the witnesses were saying and stuff. And there was like, over there, they literally would say like through the river and through the woods. And I'm like, all I could think about was like the nursery rhyme. Anyway, but moving them from the bridge to, where they were found, right? That's the kidnapping part. So y'all remind me how old were Abby and Libby? They were 14 exactly, right? Because it's a level 5 felony if the person removed is less than 14 years of age. I don't think they were less. I think they were 14, maybe 14 and 15. So but all of these are essentially kind of, you could say they're kind of aggravators. Like we know there was a gun there involved, so that would be part of it. Level 3 felony is committed while armed with a deadly weapon. Yeah. So I mean, basically, now let's just say if if we were to take some alternate theories, like say Brad Weber with his van, right? Check it out. It's a level 5 felony if so let's say they don't qualify for A. Because I believe they were 14 and 15, something like that, right? But letter B here, it is committed by using a vehicle. So let's say that Brad Weber was involved with his van, and they were, because that's, there's some that could be inferred. Then that would apply to him, but it wouldn't apply to Richard Allen. It results in bodily injury to a person other than the removing person. I don't know that would apply, because I don't think that, and there's no evidence that they were injured in being going down the hill, right? In other words, this is saying that if in the kidnapping you like bop them over the head and knock them out, as an example, right? Something like that. But that, they were, for what we know, there wasn't anything done until they got to that crime scene, right? Because that's one of the whole things. And then the rest of these would apply, I think. So, oh, thank you, Courtney. So Abby was 13. Okay, so I take it back. So then level 5 would apply to Richard Allen as well. Okay, thank you guys. Thanks. And Courtney, feel free if you want. I'll have Nightbot put a link in the chat here. Feel free to join the Discord, and hopefully the link works. But because if you join the Discord, we have a great scroll crew, and that way you can share more of your thoughts too. If you feel so inclined, you don't have to, but there's a character limit, of course, as it pertains to YouTube chat. And Discord is awesome. You can do all kinds of things. Yeah, I agree. There's no evidence of anything regarding Richard Allen. Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the things too that there's a lot of people have talked about is why nobody identified, none of the eyewitnesses, right? Like neither party asked the eyewitnesses that were there at that day, that day at the bridge, to identify Richard Allen in court and say, like, yeah, that's him, and there's been a lot of people talking about as to like maybe why that would be. And I thought that it was interesting. I haven't heard anybody mention the fact that they could eat, like, even if it's not, okay, let's say you're one of those eyewitnesses, and let's say that the state did ask them to say, can you identify him in court, right? Well, even I don't think that my personal opinion, I don't think he was Bridge Guy, but even if he was, right, let's say that he was, and let's say that they did see that, even though we know there's a lot of issues with their testimony, he looks so different now that it wouldn't even be reasonable for someone to say, yeah, that's him, I recognize him, because there's like literally no possible way. Like, he looks completely different, right? Like, even so, but what I was thinking about is how, well, they know that he's a defendant sitting at counsel table, right? They've got the attorneys at their different respective tables, and then you've got the defendant sitting there with the attorneys. They know who the attorneys are because they're seeing them in court. So they could easily make the assumption, well, it has to be him, right? And point him out. But that wouldn't have been relying on their memory, but they could have figured that out using common sense. So, Courtney says, my thoughts are people don't like hearing it, but Ari didn't do this. Well, yeah, I think we're in agreement on that one. A lot of people said Libby's grandpa and her sister. I haven't really heard much about that, Libby's grandpa and sister. But I do think that there's a lot of other issues here, like, Ron Logan and Keegan Klein. I mean, their list would go on, but, and then the Odinist, all the old Odinist people. Okay. So, but I think this is it for the charges here. So yeah, that's it. That's it for the charges. Okay. So now let's pop back on over to the jury instructions. I don't know that there's too much more we want to cover. Let me just double check here. Okay. So we went over the charges, right? We just covered the charges, right? So There we go. Those are just some notes. Presumption of innocence and burden of proof. All right, guys, this is what it's all about. And we're going to take I made a detailed timeline. We're going to break down Libby's phone. I'm really excited to do this with you guys. Each defendant is presumed innocent of each and every charge. The presumption continues throughout the case, including during your deliberations. It is not overcome unless, from all the evidence in the case, you are convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty as charged. The government has the burden of proving the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden of proof stays with the government throughout the case. A defendant is never required to prove his innocence. He is not required to produce any evidence at all. There's an alternative instruction. Definition of reasonable doubt. Oh boy. Those are some notes. Wait, where did what year did they not? Oh wow, okay. The Seventh Circuit, there's no hold, guys, hold on, look. I was like, where is it? Definition of reasonable doubt. No instruction. Incredible. What? The Seventh Circuit, this is a comment, okay? The Seventh Circuit has repeatedly held that it is inappropriate for the trial judge to attempt to define reasonable doubt for the jury. Incredible. Wow. This is the first time I've seen this in a jury instruction. Normally it's in every jury instruction that I've ever seen, that they give examples of reasonable doubt, right? I mean, you guys have all heard it. Wow. Okay. All right, Indiana, that's interesting. The evidence, okay, so we've kind of covered this in the initial jury instructions. Let me see here. That's the same as before. That's the same as before. That's the same as before. All right, defendant's decision not to testify or present evidence. A defendant has an absolute right not to testify or present evidence. You may not consider in any way the fact that the defendant did not testify or present evidence. You should not even discuss it in your deliberations. And so as it pertains to that, let me also pull up, I wanted to pull this up as well. Because we're going to go over what potentially could be done in the event that they come back and say, Judge, we're stuck, right? We're going to see if we can find this. Hold on. And I don't think I've heard anyone actually talk about this either. Like what? Because, you know, anyone that followed Karen Reed, right? They had their own way that they handle a deadlocked jury with the Tui Rodriguez instruction. And it varies by the state. And so I wonder what potentially they do in Indiana. Let's just see here. Okay, cool. I found it. And then I also have North Carolina. Where did it go? Well, we don't need that right now. Okay, so let me see here. Back to what we were doing. This. All right, so credibility of witnesses. We've discussed that already. Is there anything else of note? That might not. That might be about it. Oh, okay. Prior inconsistent statements. Okay, let's read this one. So you have heard evidence, because this came up a bunch, right? Prior inconsistent statements. You have heard evidence that before the trial, a witness made statements that may be inconsistent with their testimony here in court. You may consider an inconsistent statement made before the trial to help you decide how believable a witness's testimony was here in court. Okay. Prior inconsistent statement by defendant. That is interesting, right? When you think about all the confessions, right? Versus like the interrogation video. You've heard evidence that before the trial, the defendant made statements that may become inconsistent with his testimony here in court. So this might only really apply if the defendant testifies. You may consider an inconsistent statement by the defendant made before the trial to help you decide how. Okay, yeah, no, this only applies if they actually testify. So they can't use that in terms of what they saw in the trial. All right, so let's do this. Let me switch to my screen sharing here, and we're going to take a look at what they will do if they say that they are stuck. Right here. All right. And welcome to all the new guys. Y'all, I'm so excited. I haven't even been looking at the chat. I'm another friend from Indiana. You guys, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy. For anyone who's new, welcome. Please, if you want, join the Discord. I'll put the link in the chat again. I want to mention that I've been working on what I call the Scrolls of the World project. And so anyone that wants to become a part of the Scroll crew, you can, join the Discord if you want. You don't have to, but the Scrolls of the World project is something that's really fun because we have scrolls all over the world. And so people that want to participate are welcome to share their location. It doesn't need to be specific. It could just be a state or a city or a country, whatever. And I'm working on making a map, a world map that has little scroll icons where there's a scroll that lives there. And then at some point we'll do like a live stream and it'll be really just fun. So, but I'm so excited because we have not had any scrolls in Indiana before. And I'm so excited. That is awesome. I love getting everybody's, lived experience. That's awesome and welcome. And shout out to Frankie Figs and any other STSers that are here. Love it. Thanks for being here. Love it. All right. So now we're going to look at the Allen Charge project for Indiana. So this was what seems to be the really only thing that exists in terms of what they would be read specifically here in Indiana if they come back and they say, Judge Gull, what do we do? We can't come to a decision. So there is no reason to believe that the case can be tried again any better or more exhaustively than it has been. There is no reason to believe that more evidence or clearer evidence would be precluded on behalf of either side. And the Supreme Court agreed with that. Okay, so it says, even though they didn't say it in so many words, judges in Indiana cannot give a typical Allen charge. Interesting. So let's see. So in this case, the Lewis v. State, it doesn't lay out the first paragraph of the charge. Let's see if we can pull this up. Okay, the Allen charge, a designation given to a supplemental charge given by a trial judge to an apparently deadlocked jury, is named after the first major case which considered such a charge. Although the content of these instructions has varied throughout the years from the substance of the instruction considered in Allen v. United States, they are still referred to generally as the Allen charge. The question involved is whether the trial judge abused his discretion by unduly commenting on, giving emphasis to certain matters of evidence, by mandating a jury to act and deliberate in a certain manner, or by intimidating the minority jurors into voting with the majority in order to reach a conclusion of the case, even though they might feel inclined to decide the case otherwise. So anyone, again, that was there for when we covered Karen Reed, it was really interesting. The Tui Rodriguez instruction was really interesting because it really was specific as to like, it's like if you have one position, it was like try to throw all that out the window and try to think of it from completely the other side and vice versa. And it was like really specific strategies basically on like how you should question your own beliefs and like, how they should go about in a way arguing over it, it was really interesting. And you could see how it could kind of result in people like fighting over stuff, so 1 hour east of Delphi. Wow. But here they don't have any such charge. In fact, what we're seeing is that they're not even allowed to read the Allen charge. So, right, the Guffey court noted that courts and commentators have found the greatest potential harm in Allen type instructions was that they contain an appeal to the jurors holding the minority position this is what I was just saying, to reconsider their viewpoint in light of the majority stance. I'm trying to highlight it here for you guys so you can see since it's small. Okay, there we go, right there. So this is interesting. This is like a philosophical question here, right? Because this is part of the deliberation process, right? Like the jurors, with the jurors, when they're deliberating, whether they're given any, they're not given any guidance on how to deliberate. They're allowed to do it however they want. We're going to talk about that as well. So what they're already doing is, I'm sure they're already like doing this, but I think what the point here is that it's different when the judge is telling you to do it. I can see how that's different when you have the judge telling you have to reconsider versus it happening naturally. I think maybe that's kind of where it comes down to. The second, and this is what was just referenced in that blog, the second paragraph of the instruction dangerously approaches commenting on the evidence and the conduct of the trial, and we do not recommend its use. So it looks like this is literally all they will be read if they come back and say they're deadlocked. There's no reason to believe that the case can be tried again any better or more exhaustively than it has been. There's no reason to believe that more evidence or clear evidence will be produced on behalf of either side. So one thing that's really interesting is that, again, in Massachusetts, right, we know that after the jury has read that Tui Rodriguez instruction, that's the last time. So that's either going to push them to a verdict or they're going to come back again, and that's it. It's not going to be read again. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because in North Carolina, the North Carolina charge, that the way they do it there, and we read this at the time during Karen Reed, it specifically says that you can read the charge as many times as you want if you're the judge, but you just can't stray from the charge. Like you can't read anything different. You can't add words in, you can't take words out, but you can read it verbatim, and you can read it 100 times, which is really interesting. So you could send them back. So it's, I guess, up to the judge's discretion as to when to draw the line. All right, you guys are done, right? Again, in Karen Reed, it was more clear cut that once that Tui Rodriguez instruction is read, that's it, right? They're not going back again if they come back after that and say they're still deadlocked. So what we don't know here is in Indiana, that's all we have, that one little paragraph without any. So it could be read more than once. We'll have to wait and see. So I'm going to pull up this detailed timeline I made of Abby's phone, but I want to pose this question to you guys. So in this, I've been thinking about like this. Let's see, I'll need to share this differently here. Hold on. So yeah, so I've been thinking about like how in this case, right, if you're the jury, okay, it's almost like there's kind of two distinct chapters to this whole thing, right? Because you've got the bridge, you've got that day, February 13th, and you've got you've got all that, right? The crime scene, you've got all that stuff, right? And then you have everything that happened afterwards. Okay, so like his confinement and all the confessions and the prison conditions and all this stuff, right? So I'm really curious, what are y'all's thoughts? Good morning, Abby, happy to see you. What are y'all's thoughts about this? Because imagine what would happen. And again, they've been able to discuss the evidence throughout the trial, right? Imagine what would happen if you go back and you're trying to just like deliberate or discuss everything at once, which is kind of what we see in the chats happening, right? It's like we see people, and it's just like, you can't do, I think you need to parse it out, right? Potentially. Like this would be a strategy, right? Into two chunks, the crime scene, right? The murders, and then everything that happened afterwards. And if the jury decided to do that, what do y'all think? What do you think they should start with? Or what would you want to start with? So great question from Needs and Z's. With no people or cameras in there, would we even know if they came back saying deadlocked, etc.? Okay, here's what I can say to that. The indication, this is the best we can do. The indication that we would have, the indication that we have that something is happening is when Richard Allen is brought in. So like this happened on Saturday, right? Was it Saturday? Yes. Because he's not like, it's interesting, right? In every other trial that I can think of in recent memory, the defendant is already like there at the courthouse. They like have their own like cell at the courthouse or whatever. So it's not like there's and of course we already would know what's going on in the courtroom. But in other words, there's no like having to bring them over from and shuttle them over and all that. And so they just are already there, and they're there the whole time. What's different here is he's at the Carroll County Jail, and he has to be brought in, and it's like a 30-minute drive from what I've read. And so, you know, and of course he's got a lot of protection and whatnot. And so in other words, people that are outside the courthouse, you know, well, they see him being brought over. That right there is an indication that there's something happening. Now, what could that be? That could be because he has a right to be present for the following circumstances. If the jury has a question, if the jury sends a note of any kind, if the jury asks to review any evidence in the courtroom, or if there's a verdict. Okay. So in terms of this question that I have on the screen here about the way we would know, the best we could do is if they send a note, they would have to send a note, right? And if they send a note, we'll see Richard Allen being brought to the courthouse. Now, what the contents of that note are, we don't know. It could be to review evidence. It could be we're deadlocked. It could be we have a verdict. But just so you guys know, anytime that Richard Allen is brought to the courthouse, that is an indication that something is happening. But we just don't know what. Now, yeah. So shout out to, I'm not going to know how to pronounce his name, Susie Wild from England. Awesome. We do have plenty of UK squirrels. So shout out to everybody, squirrels of the world, all my friends here. Right. Yes. No, we don't know why. Now on Saturday, guys, there was word. I don't know if y'all had heard this probably. There was word. I don't know how, right? This is where it gets interesting. There was word through the grapevine, like the game of telephone in kindergarten. There was word that what the jury had asked to view was the interrogation video and the bridge guy video. And where I heard this from was Lauren on Hidden True Crime. And where she heard it from was some dude. And where that dude heard it from was, according to him, some dude who's an insider. It was like insider information, a reliable source or whatever. But the question is how? Because there's nobody in the courtroom. Like, not even the credentialed media are allowed. So the only people who should be present in that courtroom are the parties, right? So the state, the defense, judge, the jury, bailiffs. That's it. I don't even think the family members are allowed for that. So I don't know who could possibly have been the source of that information. But that's what I heard. I agree. I totally agree. I'm just throwing it out there. Right. Aspen Connor. I had never heard of him before. Yeah. So I agree with that. This has been tough. I'm not. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Excellent. So is that how you actually spell it? Because that's like super cool. What a creative spelling. I love it. So did anyone weigh in on what oh, I know it is the stress that this is causing, because I feel it's incredible, like not knowing what's going on and being kept in the dark. It really makes you, this has really put things into perspective, right? For me, because it's easy to take for granted having any information, whether we can see it or hear it or not, just having information. Like I was saying on Saturday, I was like, this is beyond me, how we just don't have any information. None. Like could someone not even come out from the courthouse and just say, make a statement to the media, here's what's happening? They could, and they're not. It's insane. There's no information. It's like being in, I don't know, when you think about other countries that don't have public trials, that's what it was like. And it really makes you just like, boy, I'll never take for granted now, like, whenever we're watching a normal trial and there's like constant updates and it's like, nothing's happening, right? But I'll tell you what this has made me realize is how much I am grateful for the update, even when the update is nothing's happening, right? Because the problem that I at least have with this whole thing with going on right now is we don't have enough. Like I keep thinking to myself, can someone at least just tell me nothing is happening? Like, you know what I mean? And then it's like, all right, does that make sense to you guys? So it's like, yeah, I don't know. But what would y'all do if you guys were the jury? Would you start by tackling, would you take the two-step approach, as in you've got the crime scene and the day of the murders, and then you've got everything that happened after? Would you take that approach? Would you divide them like that? And then if so, would you, where would you start? Which, in Delphi, it is the same time as it is where I live, which is 8:26 a.m. So in other words, we've got about 34 minutes before we can expect the jury to arrive at the courthouse. So also shout out to everyone that is new. Welcome to the Squirrel Crew. Please feel free to subscribe and join the Discord if you feel so inclined. So we have fun here, and we do all kinds of squirrely things and silly things. There's not really much to be silly about in this case, but normally we have lots, like for anyone that followed Kieran Reed, we do things like this. Like we've got this. That's the lolly bird. That's his actual closing argument tie that he wore on closing arguments. We've got really fun things that we can do with the commands. For example, again, referencing Kieran Reed here. Hold on, let me put this in the chat. So we have this. By the way, anyone who's new to how Nightbot works, anyone can use the commands. I'll put those in the chat as well. We have a bunch of them. So we can do things like this. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Here it is. Here it is.
There's no evidence of anything in this case.
Mm-hmm. Also, I did make I also do trial songs sometimes. So like I have a trial song for Alex Murdoch. I have a trial song for Kieran Reed. It was called Get Low Canton Style. So like I actually do, I make the song and I make like a music video. If anyone wants to see that, let me know in the chat. Again, like to the end of there's nothing to be silly about with this case with Delphi, but there's other silly things. So if anyone wants to take a silly break, let me know and we can watch the waterfall, Get Low Canton Style music video or something like that. We've got lots of fun things. As far as swoops go.
It's a house.
Swoop that I made. Anyway, long story behind that with in terms of the Alex Murdoch with him and the road trip group. Anyway, for anyone that followed DELPHI Heard, we have some funny stuff regarding Elaine, because we decided at some point her spirit animal was an ostrich. So like here's Elaine and she's being chased by the lolly bird. Got poop surprise, all kinds of fun stuff. For anyone following Brian Koberger, Prosecutor Santa, we've got Spicy Santa. All right, so, but let's move on to Libby's phone. So I'm glad you like it. Yeah, there's more where that came from. So, all right, here's the thing, guys. I kept thinking or hearing, did anyone else keep hearing that Libby had an Android phone? I had heard that. When I did a lot of research and cross-checked all the sources that are available to make this timeline. And I was so excited to learn that she had an iPhone 6S. Why was I excited? I had an iPhone 6S. And in fact, I thought I still had it. It's so funny because all the talk about Richard Allen having all these old phones, I actually had a whole pile of my old iPhones. And recently I think I traded one in and then I sold another one or whatever, but I knew I still had one. So this was yesterday when I saw this, I ran into my room and I was like, oh, where's that phone? Because I knew there's still one iPhone I still had, but it was the iPhone 5C, I think. So the 6S I had already traded in, but I had that cell phone for a really long time because I had it from when it came out until after that when I got like the iPhone 12 or something. So I had it for years. So I'm like, I don't have it now, but like I know that phone really well, which is awesome because y'all, we studied the heck out of the way this works, the cell phones in Murdoch, right? And I have so many thoughts that I haven't heard discussed when it comes to the way, like one thing no one's mentioned, which blows my mind, is the accessibility through the lock screen, right? For example, when the phone is locked, if you don't have the passcode, there's things you can do through the control panel. What do I mean by that? For example, you can put it on airplane mode, guys. You can put it on airplane mode. For example, just one of many things. And you don't need a passcode to do it. And I know for a fact, now if it was an Android, I was like, I have never had an Android. I have no idea. I can speak to the fact that with an iPhone 6S, guys, if that phone is locked, you can put it on airplane mode. Okay, that matters. So here we go. So February 13th, right? 141 to 144, Libby posts pictures on Snapchat. There's various pictures. those are found in the camera roll. 2:05 p.m. Abby and Libby reach the Monon High Bridge. Okay, Libby posts a picture on Snapchat of the bridge with no people in it. That's the one that is missing from the camera roll. The question to keep in the back of our minds as we go through this timeline is, was this because, there's been talk about maybe somebody else posted that picture or something like that? If she took it with here's the thing. If she took it with Snapchat, we know that the other Snapchat pictures were found in the camera roll. So it is interesting that if she took that picture with Snapchat, right, that it's not in the camera roll. So why? Was it deleted? And if it was deleted, who deleted it? Now, here's the other interesting thing. 2:07 p.m. was the last time the phone was unlocked. And then we're going to see it here in a second when it locks. 2:13:51 p.m. Libby films 43-second bridge guy video. All right, latitude and longitude of the video. So latitude and longitude of the video was a mile from the bridge in that general area. Now, why does that matter? Because we know they were on the bridge, for one thing. But a mile from the bridge, when you think about the van, right, Brad Weber and his stupid van, how could they possibly, is it like when you say how, okay, remember the crime scene, the distance from the crime scene to the bridge is a quarter of a mile. So the max they traveled, if there's no van involved, there's no whatever, they went, if we go with the state's theory, right, they went a quarter of a mile from the bridge to the crime scene. But the latitude and longitude were a mile away. So if you ask yourselves, well, is that just like, in other trials, in other cases, we would have gotten a lot more information. This would have been broken down in a different way. And there wouldn't have been information lost like there was in this case due to the way they handled the cell phone initially, right? Because this is so important, right? Because does this mean within a mile or like closer to the mile away? Because if you ask yourselves, well, how could they have gotten a mile away that quickly at the same time, like right after the video? Well, being in a vehicle could explain that, right? And where Brad Weber lives, right, his private road, it's like a mile away. So, all right, 2:14:34 p.m. the bridge guy video ends. 2:14:41 p.m. Libby tries to fingerprint unlock the phone and is unsuccessful. That is interesting. This, to me, I think could be one of the key details that I've not really heard talked about a whole lot. What does this mean? Like, I have so many questions. Like, what does this mean? And why was she unsuccessful? So the video ends, right? Okay, the video ends. Presumably the phone, we don't know. I'm not going to presume. We don't have information whether because in other, again, take Murdoch, for example. We know, for example, when the phone was locked, like if somebody locks it on purpose, right? Versus if it auto locks. We have that information. And if anyone never saw what it looks like to have all that cell information, I can pull up the, just to show you guys as an example of what it looks like to have all the cell information. I can pull up the, that beautiful timeline that Agent Rudolphski made. And you can see what I mean by that. That literally, it is incredible when you've got the location data and I mean, y'all, remember the orientation changes in Murdoch and how important that was to that case? That to me is what actually answered questions about what went on in the feed room. It's a whole other story. But imagine if we had orientation changes for this. Imagine if we had information of when was it locked on purpose versus auto lock. There's so much, right? So I'm not going to presume that she locked it. Options here are bridge guy video ends. The phone either auto locks, like after 5 seconds or whatever, or she locks it. We just don't have the data, sadly. I think that why it's not included is because y'all, for anyone who doesn't know, like what happened was when they first went to, and I don't remember the name of the dude again. It's hard because I would remember all the names if I had watched the testimony, but of course that didn't happen. Anyway, so whoever it was that first handled the phone, right? This made me almost throw up when I heard this. This is in 2017. They pick up the phone, right? And I don't know how, but they were able to unlock it right away. They were able to get into the phone right away because before they had done anything, before it was anything was taken from the phone, they started opening up apps and taking screenshots of this and that and like fucking with everything, right? So that right there already corrupts things, because what happens is when that activity starts happening, what happens is there's information in the knowledge C database that's going to be overwritten, right? Because it's first in, first out. So the things that were happening before that are going to get overwritten with whatever that dude's name that picked up the phone, that, law enforcement officer. And then we know that they did all these multiple extractions. And every time you do that, you're like losing information as well. And so there were a lot of things, like, for example, another thing that was lost was, and we're going to get to this too, the power off log. That was also lost. In other words, it's just not there. It's not like it found in any of the extractions and it wasn't provided in trial. It just wasn't there. It's just missing. There's things that are just missing because it got overwritten and through like the extraction process. So my thought right away, right? Just common sense, right? Why would she try to unlock the phone again? She needs it. Like, is she going to try to call 911? Well, like, what would she have done? Was she going to make another video? Was she going to try to call 911? This is only, what is that? 7 seconds. 7 seconds after the bridge guy video ends, she tries to fingerprint unlock the phone. So and I was just thinking too about that picture that isn't in her camera roll. Let's say that it was deleted by Libby or by somebody else too. That was another one of the things that was missing from the knowledge C database, was like what we normally would have in other trials was missing because it was overwritten. So they don't have that information as to like if something was deleted. But I was just thinking like she could have accidentally maybe deleted that picture when she was trying to take the bridge guy video. I don't know. I'm just thinking through the possibilities. But again, it's just hard because so much information was just missing. So, okay, but why was she unsuccessful? That is interesting, right? So that's 214. Now, what happens between 214 and 225? That's the question. Has anyone talked about this at all? I feel like no one's talked about this. This is a gap, and no one's talked. I've not heard that I can remember anybody question this gap. What happened in this gap? The bridge guy video ends, right? And presumably that's when they're told down the hill. There's no path. So at that point, shouldn't the elevation changes and the steps start there after the, like, like say 215? But there's what do we got? Like a 10.5 minute gap. What the fuck? What was going on? Oh, they should have known it. They definitely should have known it. It is not protocol. That was complete fuckery. Because, I know they testified that they didn't know it, and that wasn't lies. Any of us that follow these trials and have watched cell phone after cell phone expert test, it's just not plausible. It was either incompetence or it was done willfully. I mean, but so, right, was it someone else? And so, what have you heard, needs and Z's about this gap then, if people are talking about it? So, okay. So 225, so again, 10.5 minute gap. Now I have two floor elevation change. So 66 steps, 2 floor elevation change. All right. We're going to reference now the map. So I'm going to have to share my, reshare the thing, because that's how StreamYard works. So let me do this. And I'm going to see if we can pull this up and do a topography map, because 2 floor elevation change. Wait, hold on. What did it say meter wise? Because we're going to look at this. 50.64 meters. Keep that number in our heads. I'm going to pull up the map. 50.64 meters. All right. So this is the trail getting to the bridge. All right, that's where it ends. So right here, if you guys can see my mouse, so there's the part where the bridge is over the water, right? Deer Creek. There's the part where the bridge is over the water. And this is where they get back. Now they're back over land, right? And then it ends right here. And many of you guys have probably seen, there's, people on YouTube who live locally that have walked this bridge and shown people what it looks like and stuff. I'm assuming you guys have seen it, seen that and seen what this looks like firsthand. I don't think we can go on the bridge on Google, but I will try. But here, this is right here. This is that private, this is where, even though it has a fancy name, this is Brad Weber's private road situation, right? Where it's they say it's basically not even a road. It's a dirt road, but it looks like it's an official highway. This is where he lives. So what's happened is now there's signs private property, as you approach this area, I believe. So, so what we need to do, let me see here. View topography. Is that telling us anything? Are we getting? Why is there no information? Hold on. That's it. That's the information. You gotta be kidding me. What? How? And I don't know, do you guys remember if in the testimony anyone talked about, I feel like they didn't because, just so much wasn't done, but this seems like an obvious thing, right? If we know 50.64 meters, right? Does anybody remember, did this come up in the testimony? What the incline of okay, let's say all right, here's what the question is that I'm thinking through. Where, oh my God, where in this area, right? Between here and here, where we know there's no path, where if you go down it, would there be an elevation change of 50.64 meters? Barn or house stairs. Yeah, so how many steps was it? So 66 steps. Okay, wait, sorry, that's the distance. Okay, so 66 steps, a distance of 50.64 meters. That's a distance. Okay, and a 2 floor elevation change. So rather than looking at the steps, maybe it's better to think about that measurement in terms of the distance, 50.64 meters. But that's approximated, but that's what they figured out. And then 2 floor elevation change. I mean, that makes sense in terms of what we've seen from the hill, that area of the woods. But I'm just thinking we could do better, right? Because we can figure out specifically where it was if we know. The topography map shows literally nothing, so that's annoying. Are there any other options here? That is stupid. Yeah, I wonder if anyone, did that come up in the trials? Anybody remember? So Yeah, I'm on Google Maps. Need some Z's. I'm on Google Maps. I don't know how. Yeah, I'm on Google Maps. So I don't know why. Maybe I need to zoom out further? Let's see if that makes a difference. I mean, I'm on Google Maps, as you can see here. Terrain, right? I don't want to click on that. But it's not showing me anything. Like that's the toggle for it, but like it's not. Maybe do I need to zoom in? I mean, you know, you can barely even see it when it's zoomed in. But in other words, essentially what it's showing is this is all relative, right? Like if I do this, so now you can kind of see, right? But again, that's so zoomed out. But right here, in other words, it's nothing substantial, I guess, via this map. Oh, thank you. Need some Z's. You win. Wonderful. So, okay. I'm not going to address, like, if you guys want, we can go on. We can go on for hours. I could personally, I can't speak for everyone else. I could go on for hours about the problems with those confessions, even beyond issues that I've even seen people talk about. But I'm not going to bother. All right. So I just, yeah. But yes, okay. Thank you so much, Needs and Z's. Okay, so if I click on it, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so let's do this then. Thank you. All right, excellent. So let's see. So if we're here, on the bottom right-hand corner, why is the elevation? Why is it not changing? It just says 100 feet in the bottom right. What happens if I like click over here? It says 100 feet still. What is going on? Do I need to do that? No. Y'all help me out. Am I not clicking there? Because why is it not changing? I do see that. Thank you. But it's not. Let me zoom out. Oh, okay. Okay. Huh. Why does zooming out change the number in the bottom right-hand corner? That is interesting. I have an idea. I have an idea. All right, let me try something. I have a better idea. Let's try this. I'm doing a search, guys. Just y'all can look at the map. I've got this in another tab pulling up here. Search. Oops. All right, let's see if this works better. I'm pulling up like a specific topographic. Okay, okay, interesting. This looks official. Wow. Can I get rid of this thing on the side? Okay, let me share this to you guys. This is what I'm looking at. So, where does it? There's Deer Creek. Where does it meet? I would imagine this is this area. Oh no, that's just a street. Does it show roads? That's the trail. Let me just see here. Okay, there's the private road. There's Brad Weber's private road. Okay, so we know it intersects perpendicularly. Bridge. Okay. So oh, Bridge Creek. What? The way this is labeled isn't the best way to read, isn't the easiest to read. So let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. Oh, okay. Well, you guys, it's scale, not elevation. Yeah, well, so this is from the US Topo Maps project. So let's see. Okay. Let's try this. Let's try this one. Is this better? This is better. This is better. Yay. Much better. Excellent. Okay. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, wow. The zooming on this, the zoom feature on this works really intensely. So, okay. Interactive map. Can I search for a location? Can you not put a location in? This is so stupid. Maybe this is why we haven't heard answers. Okay, can I go to the specific state this way? Let me just refresh it since I zoomed in and it got all wonky. Can you show me Indiana, please? Y'all. There's that same one. Oh, okay. I don't know that Delphi will be on here. Well, aha, okay. No, see, oh God. That is really stupid. Okay, I'm a disaster. So basically, I was trying to scroll down, but it's zooming out and zooming back in. If anyone can figure out where I can find and pull up on the screen an accurate elevation map, y'all let me know. Okay, thank you. Hover your okay layers in the bottom left corner. Okay, is that for the map that we are currently on, Frankie? Thank you so much. Oh my God. I'm not going to use my mouse to scroll. I'm going to scroll now. Now we're talking. Okay. Oh, in Google Maps. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, thanks, Frankie. Okay, let me try that. Let's go back to that then. Let's try that again. You know, I didn't even know until recently that there's the thing with the little man, and you can make him fly to places. That was like the best day of my entire life. We had a scroll friend from Germany that helped us discover that, or helped me discover that. Probably everyone else already knew. All right, cool. So thank you, Frankie. Hover your, so we're going to go to terrain and then hover over layers. I'm reading the directions. Here. Yeah, so I have that checked here, right here. It says view topography, and that's on. You see what I mean? Are you trying this yourselves and getting different results, even though we have it set to the same thing? Because that would be wild. Yeah, I think this is the same thing I have toggled on: view, topography, and elevation. So like it's on, but it's just not showing. Right? Okay. Yeah, that's on. Okay, I'll come back to it. Let's go back to Libby's phone, and then if I'll have to just stop my screen real quick, and then we will come back to this if I can. Someone knows how to get Google Maps to cooperate. All right. Here we go. Cool. So, but this was the question. We're trying to figure out about this the distance and the elevation change. All right. And what happened in this gap? So 2:32 p.m. last recorded movement from the Apple Health app. At 5:45 p.m., Libby's phone should be under. Shout out, sorry, I'm just looking over here. Shout out to Kai Kai. We have a new scroll friend. Welcome. Glad you're here. Welcome, everybody. Anyone who's new, welcome to the Scroll Crew, and please feel free to join the Discord. Hopefully the link works, and Nipa, I'll put that in the chat. So 5:45 p.m., Libby's phone should be under Abby. This is why this whole thing about the headphones matters. Libby receives an incoming call. The headphones, these all happen like at the same time at 5:45, right? Libby receives an incoming call. Headphones are plugged in. Phone loses contact with the cell tower. Apple Health app is on and gathering data. Now, this is why I brought up the thing about the lock screen on the iPhone 6S and the accessibility and the control panel, because, you know, there was talk about, could it have been in an elevator, right? Or could it have been in a Faraday bag? Or could it have been, I don't know, whatever, right? It could have been powered off, because we just don't know, because that log is just missing. Could have been powered off. But additionally, right, it loses contact with the cell tower, but the Apple Health app is on. Now, here's the thing. The phone will still log steps on airplane mode, first of all. So, okay, let's walk through this logically. In order for, this is where it gets interesting, right? In order for any of this stuff to happen with the headphones, Libby's phone cannot be under Abby. It's not possible. This reminds me a lot in Murdoch with the phone, Paul's phone, because when we covered this and we broke it down and scrutinized every detail of that cell data and came to the conclusion, I came to the conclusion, looking at all the information, that Paul was holding and using his phone in the feed room when he was shot. He then dropped the phone. And then Alex picked up the phone from the feed room and went to go put it in Paul's pocket. And that's why we got that nonsensical testimony about the phone in the pocket, in the back pocket and all that. That you guys probably heard it. And so it really matters, right? Like, if the phone is under Abby, no one can do these things. And so, and the thing is that the headphones aren't just plugged in, they're then unplugged later. So this begs the question, well, the phone's not under Abby, right? It's elsewhere. But we know it's found at the crime scene. So in terms of answering the question of, was it powered off, was it on airplane mode? Here's my thoughts on that, considering that information, right? If the phone can't be under Abby, so therefore, we know that it had to have been moved in order for someone to do the headphone shenanigans, and then it ends up under Abby. We know it's logging Apple Health data. We know that if it was on airplane mode, it would still be counting steps and whatnot. So this to me means that it seems like likely it was powered off. Now, the question would be, if the phone is powered off, the Apple Health app, I don't know enough about how that works. Do any of you guys in the chat know? Like, because some of this Apple stuff that's, proprietary, it still, I think, can work in the background. I will say, I do know this much. From studying all the phones with Murdoch and other cases, and BK as well, Brian Kober. The only way to for sure, okay, when it comes to people, let's say you're intentionally or someone else is intentionally trying to make sure that a phone's location and any info is not going to be known during a period of time. Okay. The only way to ensure 100% that that will be the case, you have to do three things. You have to put it on airplane mode, power it off, and take out the SIM card. That's the only surefire way, because everything that we know is like, it's still going to try to communicate, because sometimes you can have it on airplane mode or off, and some things are still going to be working on in the background. And that's why I'm asking the question, because of the Apple proprietary apps, I could see those being the type of apps that still continue to gather data regardless of like if the phone is just on airplane mode or if it's just powered off even, right? Because we know on airplane mode it still is, right? But like if it's off even. Abby, sorry. Oh, thanks, Franks. You try zooming in on a location. Your maps view will change to the terrain view. Here, take a closer look. Okay, I'll try. I've tried zooming in. I don't know if it's that, or if you're on a phone, I wonder if that's different, but it should still work though, obviously. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm zooming. I know you can't see what I'm doing because I didn't share the screen yet, but I'm zooming in. Like maybe, are you starting with this search from like the city, or, I'm wondering if that's like if you're from a further out view. I mean, I'm zooming in. It's not, I'm not getting any messages. It's not changing anything. This is really annoying. I mean, you can see the elevation changing, but it's not showing me numbers. If I hover over it, I'm not getting numbers. I appreciate you working on that for me though, Frank. So let me know if you find anything else. I guess I'll show you real quick what I mean, just so that way you can see. Frank's, by the way, Frankie Figs is really good with this type of stuff, technology, and she's helped me out with some other things before too regarding BK. So I'll just show what I'm doing here. So I'm zooming in and out, right? You can see, and you can see the difference in the elevation. I presume it's this dark gray, but it's not showing me now. I'm zooming in, and it's not giving me any numbers. I want numbers. You know what I mean? Like, I can click on it. It's giving me latitude and longitude points. Gosh darn it, I hate that. So now I'm thinking, so we know from people in the trial that we have latitude and longitude from the video, and that the latitude and longitude is a mile away from the bridge. But now I'm like, well, crap. If we can we not get those? Like, I'm sure it happened in the trial. I just don't know that anyone wrote it down, because it would be like a billion numbers. But this is why it's annoying, because if I was watching the trial or if I was there in person, I would write the numbers down. And here's why: because you can click anywhere. Look, there it is. Bam! You can get the exact latitude and longitude. So literally, like a mile away, fine, but it's possible to actually find exactly where, right? Given those latitude and longitude points, if we had them, because it could be any direction. So, or it could be like a mile radius, right? But the way they got to the mile away part was because the latitude and longitude numbers that they had were a mile away. But I want to know what those numbers are. That's another thing. I'm going to write this down. I don't know if there's a way I can find that out. Probably not. If anyone wants to work on that too. The specific latitude and longitude numbers, I'm writing it down, because we can actually find exactly where that is. Now, I don't know that we'll ever get an elevation change via this map, but the lines are on there, so something is wrong. Interesting. Huh. That's weird. Something's wrong with Google Maps, I guess. That is very weird. How could that even be happening? I'm on Chrome, using Chrome, Google's proprietary browser. We love the jokes. Continue, please. So yeah, that's annoying, isn't it then? I don't know why it's not working. That's really stupid. I mean, I'm on Chrome. Anyway, all right, let's go back to the, if I can figure out why it's not working, then we'll, next time we do a lot, we'll do this on another one too, if we can figure that out. But let me present back to the phone here. And also looking at the time, it's 9:07. Have you all heard word that the jury's there? They probably are. Let me know, guys, if anyone's seeing tweets or whatever, that there's things that are happening. All right, so also I will note that the fact that Richard Allen was brought in at the beginning of the morning on Saturday, and there would need to be a heads up for him to be brought in. Remember how they kind of stopped deliberating early on Friday? Do you guys remember that? And people were like kind of surprised, like they left after like 2 hours or whatever. Here's what I think happened. What I think happened was they went ahead and sent the note and said, like, we want to view the evidence. And they were like, well, we're going to have to bring Richard Allen in order to do that, and it's going to take time. And so do you guys want to wait for that, or do you want to come back tomorrow and do it? And I think that's what happened, because the fact that he was already brought in from the get-go means to me that there was a plan ahead of time. So I just throw that out there. I think that's what happened on Friday. And then he was there right away Saturday morning, so, okay. I have an idea. Let me try using Firefox. Let me try that. Let me see if that makes a difference, guys. I know you can't see the Firefox, but I'm just going to see if this works. So wouldn't that be funny if this works better on Firefox than on Chrome? I should be able to tell you guys in just a second what the answer is on that one. It's exactly the same on Firefox. How is that possible? I think it's, wait a second. Let me see something. Let me see if there's, hold on. Is there something in settings? This is just so odd. I don't even see where. Yeah, it's not any different on Firefox. That's wild. Okay, well, so anyway, is anyone seeing, though? I don't know why that's not either. So is anyone seeing anything about goings on at the courthouse? Maybe, yeah. And so that would be on a cell phone. So that's really unfortunate, though, isn't it? Because, like, wouldn't it be better to view this on a computer? Or, I mean, I would imagine you're on a cell phone, right, Franks? Map layers, I will check it. Let's see here. Thank you so much for all of your suggestions. I really appreciate this. Map layers, map source. Map layers. Where did it go? Map source. Here's a map tools measure. Map source, offline vector. I don't see map source. I'm covering over all the things. Map source. Yeah, I don't know what, I'm not seeing anything like that, Franks. Maybe that's a phone thing. And if memory serves, do you have an Android phone? That would be different too. That's so frustrating. Hmm. Way. I don't know. So okay. I can see a thing where I can do measure, but that's not what we're looking for. Yeah, I've been. I will share the screen. I've been. I'll share it again. It's kind of more of the same, so I don't want to bore you guys, but I'm happy to share it again, so you guys can see the struggle is real. Don't normally have these problems. Normally, we do really well with our field trips here on this channel. We've had a lot of fun with that. Actually, one time we did this Fully World Tour. That was pretty fun. Shout out to those of you guys who were there for that one. Oh, you're fine, Franks. Yeah. So, like, let's just see. Like, yeah, measure distance. Okay. Yeah, distance. Great. Okay. Okay. Well, actually, it's not the most pointless because we can still get an idea. Okay, we need to convert meters to feet. What was it? It was 50.46, I think. Yep, 50.64 meters. So 50.64 meters. So we can at least do this much. So that's 166 feet. Okay. So 160. So we can do this. 166 feet distance wise. So it just depends on where they were at, right? And that's where the terrain matters. But anyway, let's see. And then if I do measure 124 feet. So it's like, oh, cool, I can drag it. Okay, 166 feet. So something like that far on in terms of the map. Oh, that actually is kind of helpful, isn't it? That's kind of helpful. Now, this is via the stat data from Apple Health. That's actually kind of helpful. And you know what? How far is a quarter of a mile in feet? Let's see. Do those two line up? That's important to know. No, they don't. Oh, dear. Oh, that's not good. 1320, 1,320 feet. Okay, so that's interesting. Let's go back to the phone thing and I'll show you what I mean. I hate that you have to stop sharing every time you want to switch between your things. It's a StreamYard thing, but anyway, it is what it is. So, all right. So here's why that's interesting, because the distance here, right, as we just saw, that was, what was 166 feet, I think it was. And so, but the quarter of a mile to the crime scene is like 1,320 feet, I think I said. So here's what we could glean from that, okay? What we could glean from that is this. It stops recording, or the last recorded movement from the Apple Health map is at 232. So potentially, the rest of that distance was covered after 232. Now, the other thought, right, remember, guys, was like if they weren't walking, if they were in a van. So if they were walking 66 steps and then got in a vehicle, that could also explain it. Goodness gracious. So what we are trying to figure out is a number of things. I want to know the latitude and longitude of that video, the bridge guy video. I want, if anyone can figure that out, the latitude and longitude, specifically coordinates of that video, because we know it's a mile from the bridge, right? But we can get latitude and longitude points for that. If we can, then we can see exactly, specifically where that video, the data said it was filmed. And then the way what I was looking for was because we have a 2-floor elevation change. And so this would show where they got off the bridge, right? So the way we can figure that out is by looking at the elevation on well, if we could look at the elevation on the map and see, okay, where do we see that type of elevation change? And then we could figure out where they went, right? And we could figure out, because these two things coincide. So these were all together. Between 225 and 232, two things happen. There's 66 steps as per the Apple Health data, and there's a 2-floor elevation change. That sounds like going down the hill, right? Like that sounds like that to me. And then this is what's interesting, right? Is 2:32 p.m. the last recorded movement from the Apple Health app. But where they were found is further than this. That's what we proved. Quarter of a mile is like 10 times further than they had already traveled, basically, roughly. So in other words, that's the crime scene is 10 times this distance away. So that didn't take them all the way there is the point. This did not take them anywhere near all the way there to the crime scene. So the last recorded movement from the Apple Health app, well, if you're in a van, if you're not walking, then that could be. Because remember, everybody was saying it's the last recorded movement, but they don't think it was the last movement of the phone. So that would actually really support the idea that the phone was still moving because it had to move. It had to move to get to the crime scene, but it wasn't logging steps. Yeah, so that's why I wanted to really examine this timeline. And the thing that gets so interesting is when we get to where we were here about the phone being under Abby, because again, we know it couldn't have been because of the headphone shenanigans. And so and remember, check it out, right? Now look, Apple Health app is on and gathering data. So again, it's still on. It's just not recording movement. Okay, let me think this through because if it was on, if it was on airplane mode, right? Like we said, it would still be logging steps. But again, that wouldn't apply. But this is where it gets tricky because if she was in a vehicle, say they were in a vehicle, then it also wouldn't be logging steps. So really, the question comes down to this right now for me with the cell phone, in terms of this gap here, is the lack of steps due to the phone being powered off? Or is it due to not walking because they're moving in by alternative means? Let me see real quick here if I can find something. Okay. I'm just doing a search here. So yeah, so what I'm seeing here is that if the phone is off, the Apple Health app won't work. But like in airplane mode, all the location services that are used through the Health app will still work, like I said. Find My iPhone will also work if it's even if it's offline. Which that's the other interesting thing. Okay, so I'm wondering, so that takes us back to this whole thing. So remember, the jury asked a question about this, right? And we know that she'd find My iPhone turned on. And we know that they were trying to ping her the network was, right? So that's where it gets weird that's like it's not communicating to the network. So there's no answer for that if it's off or in airplane mode. That has to be something else. Because even if the phone is off, wow. Do you guys see what I mean though? Like, did someone take the SIM card out? Remember what I said initially, right? There's 3 things that you usually have to do. I don't know that anyone considered that. What if whoever had the phone took the SIM card out? That would keep it from communicating with the network, wouldn't it? Has anyone considered that? That could be a thing. Right. Right. That's true, Franks. So well, we know that if they did get in a van, they would have had to get off the bridge, right? We know that. So we know there would have been, like, just logically thinking through, there would have to have been an elevation change for them to get off that bridge and go anywhere, you know, and get to where, but again, if you think about down the hill, like that's his freaking Brad Weber's road is right there. And, you know, so I think the jury did ask a question about this. I think that they said it could have been that there was like a, you know, something happened to the signal. But the thing is that it was out for so long. Like, that's the thing that doesn't really quite, that's where it's tricky. And that's why the defense expert really kind of felt like there was some fuckery going on. Because let's review it again. So 214, these are all good questions, guys. Thanks for thinking this through with me. 214, right, tries to fingerprint unlock the phone, unsuccessful. 225 to 232, we have the this here, 66 steps, 50 points. Again, that really, that does look like that's going down the hill. It's just what happens after that, right? Is really kind of what matters, right? 2-4 elevation change. Again, that does, just from, even though we don't have an accurate number from the topography, from looking at it and viewing it and videos and stuff, that matches up, right? It would be a 2-4 elevation change to get to down where Brad Weber's road is, or to get down to like the creek, either way. Pretty sure. Yeah. So, and then 2:32 p.m., last recorded movement from the Apple Health app. So the fact, here's the key thing though, right? The fact that the Apple Health app never, hold on, when does it stop? This is it. The Apple Health app never stops logging data. That's the key. That's the key here. That's the key. That's the key. The Apple Health app never stops logging data. It stays operational and it remains on and gathering data, right? On and gathering data. That means the phone can't be off. That eliminates the phone being off. But what it means is the phone could be on airplane mode or something else. But I think we've eliminated the airplane mode because, again, it still would be getting pinged and stuff. There still would be location data. The fact that it loses signal with the tower, loses contact with the cell tower, I think we're looking at someone took the SIM card out. And that could explain all this, because the phone could still be on. The Apple Health app could still be on, gathering data, but it wouldn't have a signal with the cell tower. And this also is important because why? Then it reconnects. Y'all, this right here, whatever happened to the girls in terms of when and what we can say from the phone data is this. Abby's phone was not under, Libby's phone was not under Abby. And at the very least, whoever had the phone wanted to be able to have the phone itself or the phone with the girls and not have it be communicating with the cell towers. Because this is the only explanation. Now, at 10:32 p.m., the headphones are unplugged. Again, that shows it couldn't be under, that phone is still being manipulated in human hands, like the defense said. And then Mr. Cecil originally thought that Libby's phone died at 10:32. He later changed that. And then you have this, 4:33 a.m. You know what I think this is, guys? You know what I think this is? I can answer that. What this looks like to me is this would be when the phone, either the phone itself or the phone and the girls are at their location where they're found, and the phone's going to get ready to be put under the body. That's what that looks like to me. Because imagine, like, if you're trying to make it seem like something that's not right, that's what this looks like to me, right? You take the SIM card out, and then other things can happen. You know, the phone can be elsewhere, right? And then once you're ready to have it all be found, right, where it is, everything's done, you know, then you put the SIM card back in, stick the phone under Libby's body. And you know why you would do that, right? It would be to try to make it seem like no one was touching it, obviously. Or maybe, you know, I don't know. The phone is probably placed there. I mean, it has to be. Unless the girls were alive all that time, and then all the things happened in the phone. I don't know. This just looks so deliberate to me. The 4:33 a.m. looks so deliberate to me. And because then the SIM card could be put in, then the phone reconnects. And so now it's supposed to make it look like the phone was always there. Ta-da, right? Yes. I think that's what this looks like. That's what this looks like to me. And then they were found. I don't remember what time they were found. It was in the afternoon, I think. Does anyone remember specifically? And that this is like saying I've staged the thing, and now I want it to look like the thing that I want it to look like, that it's not. You know, we see this in cases all the time. So, you know, there's a lot of good questions like this in the Ezra case too. Like, I think I kind of figured out from looking at all that drone footage that she had driven the car all around and through the mud to try to fabricate her story that had gotten stuck in the mud initially. She was building her story, again, staging the crime scene, right? You know, you want to leave that crime scene when the person doing this leaves the crime scene, they want to leave it in the manner in which they want it to be found. And what you would want to do in this case is you want it to make it seem like the phone was on the whole time. The phone was working the whole time. And look, it doesn't show it was elsewhere, right? You know what I mean? Noonish, thanks. So that's the heart of the matter, right? Because to what end stuff was deleted off it? Well, technically we don't actually know, because the stuff that would have shown what was deleted was missing itself from the Knowledge C database. But either way, more than likely, what this looks like to me is if it's because it's with the girls. Like, the girls are there too. That's the heart of the matter, right? That's the whole thing. Because remember, there were so many people out there on that trail, and everyone testified that people would have heard screaming, like they would have heard them. And also, if you think, not that this really matters, but if you think it through logically, like, why would you be doing that? Something like that out in broad daylight and on a day when there's like extra people out more than usual, you know. But at 4:33 a.m., no one's going to be on the trail. No one would hear them screaming, right? I mean, this is why that question matters. Thank you for your question, Franks, because if it's not to delete stuff, that this would indicate, right, that somebody else had the girl. And this is, you know, I know this has been people's theories, but I so much prefer to go through it and come to the, like, this is just happening as a result of y'all's questions as we think it through logically. You know what I mean? Like, how can we answer these questions about the phone? There's things that don't make sense any other way. Like, 4:33 a.m. So the idea would be, right, the phone is with the girls. You don't want them to know where the girls are, so you take the SIM card out, right? And then bring them back at 4:33 a.m. Nobody's out there. Things happen, but SIM card back in. You know, the thing that's been assumed, I guess, is maybe more so on behalf of the state. The assumption has been, right, that right after the bridge guy video, like, everything happens right after that. But why would anyone assume that? There's literally, think this through, guys. There's no, in terms of when they were killed, take the defendant out of the picture, forget anybody else, just in terms of who could have done it, right? There is literally no way to know what time they were killed, right? Because the medical examiner, they couldn't estimate a time of death, you know, which seems kind of weird. Or it was like a really wide range or something like that, right? Like it was a really, it didn't help anything. Everyone was hoping there'd be a time of death and they couldn't do it. So from all the people that were in the courtroom. So Frank says, as a perp, you have no idea that the search would stop. So why would you not go back to stage the bodies? I don't agree. Took them back to where they were found. Hold on. Let me think what you mean here. So took them back to where they were found. I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Franks. So, you know, at the time, at this 4:33 a.m., right? This is before, oh, right. So remember, guys, the search, remember, no. I think I see what you're saying. The search parties, remember, they retired around 2 a.m., guys. Does anyone else, if anyone else remembers, you can verify. But my memory serves, the search parties dispersed at 2 a.m. Do y'all remember that? Or they had a period of time where they took a break. Oh crap! I just wish we could see. There's no way to find that without having to go through and listen to people that were there and then try to find the right spot. And I'm pretty sure, does anyone else remember? There was a period of time where the search parties were not there. And you know, how would someone know that? Well, let's just say, for the sake of the example, if you live there, like Brad Weber or Ron Logan, if you live on that property, you would know when the search parties are gone and have taken a break, because everybody said you could see like the flashlights and shit. Not only that, but you could hear the voices. Then we have that person who appeared on that, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Person who appeared on that trail cam. And no, there was never a clear answer as to who that was, because no one could hear the answer in court. But that, remember, there was that, for anyone who missed that part, it came out in the defense, and during the defense's case in chief, I believe it was, that there's a trail cam and it caught a person, it caught a body, and it was like in the middle of the night or something. So did I understand your question though correctly here, Franks, that you're saying, you're thinking that the search parties would have been out? My recollection is that the search parties took a break at 2 a.m. Let me see if I can double check and find that out for sure. But that's my memory. And at the time when I heard that, we hadn't gotten this extra cell phone data. Like I didn't think anything really of it. Like it didn't, you know, I just remember thinking it was odd that they were taking a break, but let me just see here. If I can find. Where's the part about? I'm looking for it, guys. Looking for it about the break, when they took a break. Man, where is it? So what I'm thinking is, what I'm thinking is if the girls were alive and then waited until the search party took a break and then brought them out there and killed them, maybe. Because remember, the other thing too, remember the initial search party, this is coming back to you, the initial search party searched that area, right? Remember? They searched that area and they didn't find them. But then they took a break. I'm just trying to remember how long the break was, but I'm pretty sure it was at 2 a.m. They took a break and then came back. So and again, we have no evidence that they were, Like I'm saying that they weren't, we have no evidence that they were killed during that day, like during the daytime. Like we don't, again, the Emmy didn't have like a good time of death. Well, you know, I mean, now having said that, this is where the Odinist stuff kind of comes in, right? Because there's all that information didn't come into the trial, so I guess we can't really go through all that. But like, I mean, we could, but in terms of like, there could have been a specific reason why it was that place, right? Could have been. I don't know. I mean, so let's take it the other way. Let's say that the girls were killed and they weren't taken anywhere else apart from the crime scene. What else could explain the cell phone stuff? Because we still have that up on the screen here. So what else? There's not much else besides taking the SIM card out that could explain this data, right? That the phone is still on, it's still Apple Health app is still on, but it disconnects from the cell tower, loses contact with this, and then gains it again, right? And then we also have the headphones shenanigans. So had 10:32 p.m. So something happened here. What happened here? What was going on there? The incoming call is at 5:45, and that's when the headphones are plugged in. Headphones are unplugged at 10:32. So interesting. Did I say something else besides tower signal? I might have misspoke. I mean, that's what you're saying. The cell tower. So yeah, to explain the fact that the phone is on, the Apple Health app is on, right? But it's not communicating with the cell tower. So if it wasn't the SIM card being taken out, the other options are just so much less plausible, right? Like the example that the expert gave was like, it would have to be like in an elevator or like in a Faraday bag, that unless the tower just cuts out, right? But that's a long period of time. To lose contact for check it out, from 5:45 p.m. until 4:33 a.m. That's almost 12 hours. I don't think it's going to lose contact with the tower on its own for that. That's not plausible. Not to mention, right? There have been all these people that have been calling and texting and stuff, and they all came in at 4:33 because it reconnected to the cell tower. So, additionally, I have here at the bottom, no one checked if the phone was on silent or vibrate. And then again, power off log was missing, possibly overwritten. So I know where Abby's blood was. I know, right? Abby's blood. That's the other thing. In her hands. That's a great point. The blood was missing from the crime scene. That's a great point. Thank you, Susie, for reminding us of that. That's the other issue. Because Abby's blood was not found anywhere at that crime scene. For anyone who forgot, I temporarily forgot that in the midst of discussing all these other issues. Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah. But my kind of impression of that is like, that the signal would wave in and out, right? Like, sometimes you get a strut, sometimes it just comes and goes, it fluctuates, right? But it wouldn't be just completely dead for 12 hours, I would think. Right? Like, it's, again, if the phone's in the same place the whole time, that's the question. If the phone's in the same place the whole time. And I think one of the juror questions, if I remember correctly, I think one of the juror questions was would it have been possible to contact the cellular network provider and find out if there had been any issues with the tower signal? And they said, yes, it's possible, and we didn't do it. Actually, yeah, that was a juror question. Let me repeat that. One of the jurors, so these jurors are asking the same questions we're asking. That's why this is awesome, right? Because we can really the jurors are asking the same questions. They said, is there any way you can get the log from the network and find out if there, if and when there were any issues with the cell tower? They said, it's possible. We didn't do it. What a shame, right? But yeah, Abby's blood was not at that crime scene. There's a lot. That's a whole other thing. I mean, one could do an entire like long live stream on just that one issue. The way the blood spatter and all that is such a puzzler. There's so many questions about that entire scenario that stumped everybody and continue to stump everybody. And that's the type of thing. I don't want to get into the confessions. I think they're pointless. I think they're a distraction. But that's the thing, right? Like, if there had been a confession from anybody that could explain that crime scene, that confession for me would hold some sort of weight. It would hold water. It would be more valid than anything we've heard. Right? I know. It's just, right? I know. It just drives you crazy. So can I zoom out a little bit? Let me see if I can zoom out a little bit and make it so that you guys can see maybe more of this. Well, I don't know. So, but in terms of just in summary of the timeline, right, with the phone, some of the big questions, right, we have the missing picture. I don't know if that really matters all that much. The only reason that would matter to me is if it indicated that somebody had her passcode or got into her phone and deleted it on purpose. But I don't think that's the case, and here's why. Because if they had the ability to manipulate that cell phone, assuming that that person was also responsible for the cell phone, the later actions with the cell phone, and for it, not communicating with the cell tower, if they had been able to manipulate itself, there'd be no reason to go through all those other steps. Like the other steps that happen later potentially reflect someone that can't get into the phone, right? Doesn't have the passcode. So, but that's the only reason this would matter about the missing picture would be if it could indicate somebody had gotten into her phone, or maybe asked for her passcode at gunpoint, something like that. I don't know. And why would someone do it? Well, to try to prove that they weren't there, maybe, right? Why would they delete it from the camera roll? Well, that was them arriving at the bridge. Anyway, so that was one thing. So the missing picture. Then other big thing was this gap, the 10-minute gap between 2:14 and 2:25. What happens there? Next big question. How did they get the rest of the way? Now, if they're not, like, that's the other question. If they're not in a vehicle, this doesn't make any sense. Because here's the thing. Remember, they had a lot further to go to get to the crime scene. That's another, like, let's just focus on that again for another second, guys. How do we explain this? Because they have to get they're found a quarter of a mile away from the bridge. We know that this is it, right? The phone is still on at this point. At this point, it's actually still connected to the cell tower. But regardless, it's still using the Apple Health data. The app is still running, and the last reported movement. So if they had walked the rest of the way, it would be, and if it happened at this time, it would have been here. It would have been here. The Apple Health app was still the Apple Health never stopped working and never stopped logging data. So this doesn't make any, like, it seems like the only answer, man, would be the app, like, right? You guys see what I'm saying here? And any aux cord. Yes, I can answer that. Any aux cord. It's not solely for headphones. It's an auxiliary. So that's a good question. So there are other things, like, for iPhone stuff, right? There are other things where if you want to have something else that connects to it, just like with like the lightning, not that lightning is used really anymore, but if you guys remember, there are all those different like connectors and shit, right? Where lightning to this and lightning to that, right? So with the iPhone 6s, and I had one for years. Okay. So that would have been, if you wanted to connect certain things to it, you could use the aux, like if a dongle, I guess, like aux to something else, right? I don't know, I can't think of an example specifically, but like, I don't know, external microphone, I have one of those, it's just an example. Like I have a dongle for my external microphone to connect it to the phone, but it could be anything, right? Whatever external things there are, accessories. So anything with an aux cable. So y'all feel free to pop in the chat other things that that people use aux cables for, but that's what it was. But thank you for that question, because that helps us start thinking about that as well. Yeah, it's just, and the other thing just to note too, we know that, again, just to reiterate, this is for myself, you guys, but I'm reiterating it for myself too, right? When it loses contact with the tower is the same time. That's the thing. That's what I wanted to find. So 5:45 p.m., two things, right? Well, more than two, but the headphones are plugged in or something with an aux cord, right? Phone loses contact with cell tower. Now, it's also noteworthy, right? Libby receives an incoming call. So the thought from the defense expert was that they plugged something in, like headphones, because then the phone wouldn't be heard ringing. Because at this point, people were out there looking. So they wanted to silence the phone. So they plugged something in, which is interesting because, again, those things would have had to have happened. Well, obviously, the incoming call, like these are in the correct order. It would have been incoming call, then the thing was plugged in, whatever it was. After that, it loses contact with the cell tower. Those are in the correct time order. But what I was thinking is that, again, you could silence it from the control panel without knowing the password. But maybe this person isn't tech savvy and didn't know they could do that, so they plugged headphones in. I don't know. That's another interesting question, right? Because again, like you don't need the passcode to silence the incoming call. I don't even think you need a. I think you could even decline it. Like you could hit decline. You know, it pops up on the screen. I don't think you even need a passcode for that. Do you guys know? I'm pretty sure you don't. I'm pretty sure you can answer or decline calls, right? Sometimes like, you know, things that you do so often you stop thinking about it, right? Like I can't remember, like if it's ringing, if you have to, no, you don't have to enter a passcode, do you? Anyway, but yeah, but potentially you could hit decline, but all of this could be done without passcode, but maybe they didn't know that. But same time, so then maybe this person was like, oh shit, like I need to do something so that this phone doesn't keep getting calls or something. I don't know why they wouldn't have thought of that ahead of time. What I will say is that question right there would speak to this wasn't planned ahead of time. Anyone who was like plotting this ahead of time would have considered the cell phone first, right? Like first thing, like obviously, like with every other trial, that's what we hear in cases, like, you know, figure out the cell phone first. But it seems like this person didn't consider the cell phone until a call came in at 5:45. That's what this kind of looks like, which is interesting. And then they're like, oh, fuck. And then like, you know, plugging in the headphones. Again, that looks like someone who's really not tech, like that's odd, right? And to that end, removing the SIM card could be what someone, if they're not tech savvy, you know, the initial cell phones since the dawn of time all had SIM cards, right? That was like if you're an old school phone person, say, and you don't know anything about newfangled devices, you would know, okay, this hole is for headphones and this SIM card makes the phone work, right? Potentially. I don't know. And so maybe they just didn't know what to do. And so they took the SIM card out. Maybe these are just questions, you know, probably things that the jury's asking themselves. Right? Again, the only reason would absolutely side controls, right? But if you're not familiar with a cell phone, let's say you're a dumb phone user. That could explain some of this stuff, right? In 2017, I mean, I think there's probably still some people that use dumb phones, but not many. But in 2017, you know, if you're a dumb phone user and then I could see you not knowing what to do with an Apple iPhone 6S. Some ant. I don't know. Maybe the ant did it. Interesting. Now there was some talk of what was like a scrambling device. Does anyone remember call scrambling or something scrambling? Like some sort of device that you could use to scramble data. Does anyone remember specifically what that was? And someone offered it as a potential suggestion as to explain what was happening here with that. Maybe something was plugged in that could fuck with the phone, and that's why it also. I mean, I guess the idea being that there's two things that correlate. Okay, let's work with this for a second. There's two things that correlate, right? Again, the same time that something's plugged in, let's remove headphones from it. The same time that something is plugged in to the aux thing, it loses contact. Actually, I take that back. That can't be it. Never mind. Because at 10:32, it's unplugged, but it doesn't connect. So what I was going to say is if it reconnected at the same time it was unplugged, then you could see there's a correlation, but never mind. Forget that. Because 10:32, headphones unplugged, but it doesn't reconnect until 4:33. So that can't explain it either. So that's not what it is. It's not like it's whatever that suggestion was, which I just saw somewhere from somebody. That wouldn't make sense then. If it had reconnected to the tower at 10:32, then there would have been a correlation with whatever was plugged in and then the tower, you know? So, so let's go back to the map again. Hold on. And I welcome everybody's thoughts as well, guys. This is a really, again, you know, what we're talking about. This is what the jury's doing. So let's go back to this. Now I'm going to forget this quest to get the feet because I just, you know, it's not doing well right now. So, all right, but let's do this. Wow. Now, for anyone who missed it, Lawyer Lee posted a video and walking this trail. And I remember when she got to this part because there's a bunch, these are all a bunch of logs here. I noticed it. I actually was like, whoa, because you can see it in her video. And I actually put a comment there and I put the timestamp because I thought it was interesting. Now, these logs and branches here, they were here for Google Maps taking this picture, and they were also there when Lawyer Lee visited it, which was just recently during the trial. But she's like showing the water and talking about fish, and you can see it real quick, and it shows. And I was like, that's interesting. Does anybody else think it's interesting? Because if it's like these have been there for, I don't know. Part of me was wondering if it was like a beaver dam or something, right? Like, or I don't know. But the fact that they're there, I don't know. But I just noticed them. But it's just funny that you can see it here as well. And then here we are. So I love taking a closer look. I mean, you can kind of get a better feel for the terrain, even though, you know, just looking at it closely, you can kind of see. And then this here is the Brad Weber's Road. Now, I wonder, where can the little man take us to? Can we go here? Oh, denied. Can we go, wee, wee? Nope. Will it take us to, I'm sure it won't, but let's try anyway. Can we go to Brad Weber's Road? Right. Can we go to Brad Weber's Road, please? Nope. Denied. Aw, sad. So, y'all, let me know what else haven't we covered? Let me look at my list here. You know, really all this boils down to, in summary, right, is the reasonable doubt. Like, right, like you can see how it's easy. Like I still love to solve things, even when it's like with all these different trials, right? You know, Murdoch, for example, right? I mean, we squirreled the shit out of that. I mean, we really, I'm really proud of the work we did. I will say on that. For anyone who's interested in what I'm talking about, I have playlists for all the trials that I've covered, but we did a lot of work on that. And you know, even though it's like we already knew a verdict, obviously, blah blah, but it's like there were still questions that hadn't been answered, and like so, just for my own edification, like I'm the type of person that tries to figure that stuff out anyway. But for the jury's purposes, all these same questions that we've been discussing, what does that spell? What does that mean for the jury? And I mean, you know, I can't see any way around reasonable doubt. I mean, there's just like, it's all it is reasonable doubt to me, because there's no like literally there's no answers to anything. There's only questions. Like there's no answers. There's only questions. We know 2 girls died, you know, which is wild. So Another thing I wanted to say that I think is really interesting is that there's been, when people are talking about weighing in on it, what they think the verdict will be and guilt and innocence and all that, right? I've noticed a number of people say things like, I think he's guilty, but I think the jury's going to find him not guilty. What do you guys make of that? Because I find that really interesting from like a psychological perspective. Like, I feel like it's baby steps in terms of people maybe recognizing their own bias potentially. Like I think he did it, but like the jury's gonna look at the evidence and see he didn't do it. I don't know. What do you guys make of that? I think it's fascinating. Does anybody know? Let's see if we can find what's going on at the courthouse right now. Oh, I see Courtney joined the Discord. Welcome. Welcome to anyone else who's joining the Discord. I'll put the link in the chat again for anyone who's just now joining us. Welcome to the Squirrel Crew, people. We love it. So let's just see if I'm not seeing, hold on, let's just see. Because what I'm wondering is this, guys. I kind of thought it was gonna be a quicker verdict, to be honest. I thought it was gonna come back quicker. And the thing that's interesting to me, yeah, they came at 9 a.m. as expected. Has anybody seen anything about Richard Allen being at the courthouse today? Here's from 51 minutes ago. Jury returned. I'm not seeing anything about him being there, but that doesn't mean he isn't there. Anyway, y'all let me know if you guys know. But yeah, so I thought it was going to be kind of like a quicker verdict. The fact that, Saturday, potentially they were viewing evidence, although it's hard to know how that source was, but they were potentially viewing evidence, right? And then they would have had some time after that to continue deliberating. And viewing those videos makes sense regardless of what that makes sense, right? We all kind of expected that. So like, let's walk through this, right? Let's just say that on Friday, they got the case Friday, right? Let's just say they got the case. So they had 2 hours or whatever. Let's say they started deliberating and they realized pretty soon right after the ballot, right? We're going to have to watch these 2 videos. That's going to be the first step because they were probably discussing the 2 videos because it makes sense, right? And just like I said, it's kind of 2 chapters because you've got one video dealing with what happened. That's bridge guy video. And then you have the other video of the interrogation. That's, again, the aftermath. So that makes sense. They come back the next day. We have to watch these videos before we can even continue any further. And so, what is that? Like 3 hours max? 2 hours? I think it was. I think the estimates I heard were 3 hours max for both of those. Because which is generous because I think the interrogation was like 2 hours. So anyway, but then they still had another, let's see, 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, 4 or 5 hours to deliberate. If you think about it that way, that would be like when they really start deliberating, right? If they realize on Friday, we're not going to get anywhere until we see these videos. They watch the videos, then that's the amount of time they have to actually start deliberating and discussing all that, right? So that kind of does make sense then that, now they've come back. And, it remains to be seen. I wonder if we'll get a verdict today. I don't know. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed going over all this. And again, I do have a list of things, again, that I really want to find those latitude and longitude points for the video. I'll look into that. And then I may be popping back later on. We'll see what happens. So I may pop back on later today. I also had another thought, guys, for if I do come back later today or just whenever for the next live stream with this. I want to do a deep dive into Centurion. That's the company that provides the psychologists to all the prison, because like Dr. Walla was hired by Centurion. Like that name kept coming up from the people who were there in the courtroom, that name Centurion. And it sounds like, you know, I'm just curious what's going on with them. Just from like, as like a side quest thing. So that's another thing that we might do next time as well. And I'm making a list here of all the other questions that we still had about like the gap in the timeline and then the covering that distance. I mean, that right there is a huge problem. Like beyond anything else, I'm glad I have this pull up. Beyond anything else, guys, this is a huge problem for the state because this does not take them to the crime scene. And it should have, because the phone was still on. I know I've already said, I'm just reiterating. If you're on this jury and coming back to this would be huge, because how did they get to the crime scene? There's absolutely no way it wouldn't have been logging steps unless they stopped walking. And we know that one person didn't carry both of them for almost a quarter of a mile at the same time, right? So, I mean, beyond getting in a van or in a vehicle, the only other thing you could be looking at is multiple people, and they were both carried, I guess, could be the only other way I could think about, right? If they were carried, that could be the other thing. I don't even think this would take them to the water. I don't think this would take them to the water. I think this would take them to right before the water. And then they have to go all the rest of the way to the crime scene. But having said that, if they were carried, it would, no, that can't be it. If they were carried, if they're carried, the way the phone works, I actually know because I'm a runner, the way the phone works with the steps like that, if it doesn't know who's wearing the phone. Like if the phone is in, say, Libby's pocket or in her hand, but if she's being carried, right, it would log the steps of the person carrying her. Because all it does, it senses the vibrations or whatever. So it would sense that. Technically, you can even pick up your phone and just wave it up and down rapidly, and it'll think you're logging steps. So it's about it knows like it's the accelerometer. It's not vibration. It's the accelerometer. So it picks up that movement up and down, right? Like so, if you take the phone, you guys can test it out. If you take the phone and you like go like just shake it hard up and down, or you can even like hit it against your hand or whatever, up and down, it'll log steps. So again, if somebody else was carrying her, it would be sensing the steps of that person because she would still be going up and down with them, if that makes sense, right? She and the phone, they would all be moving, up and down. So, okay, well, I think that's all. Was that the last question? So then, and then of course there's all this is a whole slew of questions, but in terms of the initial happenings, we have the 10-minute gap, and then we have covering this distance, and that's a problem for the state. And I'm still going to see if I can figure out how to get, and I do remember, now that I think about it, I do remember Andrea Burkhart mentioning there was issues with this, with the topography, that they didn't really have good answers for that. Thinking about this, the struggle was real, right? Y'all saw to get the topography of that area. And I remember her saying that they never actually had surveyed that. Maybe that's why we couldn't get the information. I remember her saying like that they tried to go on some topography website. It's probably the same one I went to. It didn't work. And that they couldn't really get that information. And it's like one of those things where it's like, how can you not? Your law, like it should have been done. But I wonder if that's why we couldn't find that. So anyway, y'all, it has been awesome. Thank you so much. And welcome to all the new friends. Love to have you guys here. Again, if you join the Discord, we can continue this discussion anytime with no restrictions on length. You can also post, links, videos, pictures, whatever. And I do have a thread specifically that I had made just the other day for Delphi. if you or you can post in Squirrel Crew. That's like our Squirrel Crew is like the general conversation, and then you can also post in the Delphi thread if you feel so inclined. But I will probably be back later today. Make sure you're subscribed so you can get notifications, and also you should get notifications through Discord as well if you join that, even when the YouTube notifications don't go through. If you're interested in seeing where else this takes us, and just in case anyone hasn't heard this, if there's word that there's a verdict, just so everyone knows, it'll be 2 hours before they actually get the verdict. There's a 2-hour window that they've built in to get everybody ready for that. So we have to, once we hear that there is a verdict, we have to wait 2 hours, which that might be another good time to go live so we can all try to not go insane. Anywho, but y'all, thanks so much for being here. And as I always say, thanks for being a squirrel. Love y'all, and hopefully see you guys later today. And maybe today will be the day we'll get some answers. Justice for Abby and Libby, and justice the right way, right? And justice for Richard Allen as well. Justice all around, justice on all sides, of course. So, and I'll just reiterate. I have a saying that I started saying during Karen Reed, right? I'll just reiterate: an injustice for one person does not equal justice for another. Just keep that in your minds, guys, especially if you hear people who think otherwise and are just, convict justice right now. An injustice for one person does not equal justice for another. So I'll leave you guys with that. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see y'all next time.